Our next set of value scales is going to incorporate our new technique. As I mentioned in the previous video, we're going to now take everything we learned about applying pressure to create different values with our various pencils and now incorporate a technique that allows us to create a much cleaner edge to those values. This is going to be our introduction to smooth or circular shading. The first thing I want to do is divide up my spaces. Circular shading or smooth shading will take a little bit more time. It is a technique that incorporates a lot of control and thought. So notice that I just drew through 5 boxes because again I'm going to work with 5 steps of my value. Hello. I'm just going to record this part again as I was editing the video in which we talk about our sudden value scales using the circular smooth shading technique. The audio somehow was not recording correctly. So a lot of the introduction stuff I talked with you about in that video got lost. So what I wanted to point out to you before you watch the clips of me working without audio is the circular smooth shading technique. So when we work with circular smooth shading, we are going to move our pencil point in a small circular motion like that. And the key is that motion and a lot of overlapping. So when I work with that circular motion, I want to move my pencil out away from where I started, backtrack a little bit, move out away a little bit, backtrack a little bit. Kind of related to if you've ever watched the movie Finding Nemo, and when Marlin goes to take Nemo to school the first day and he tells him to swim out and swim back in, it's what you want to do with your pencil point. This constant overlap will help with the smooth shading technique. This circular motion replaces the 4 directions we are working with, and the combination of the overlapping and that circular motion will reduce the amount of texture we will see from the pencil moving across the paper. So what that means is in the directional shading technique, we could see the lines. We were using the strokes of the pencil moving, and I got something on my mat under there, that's why it's creating some different values and lines there. This is what I mean by the pencil leaving a texture while it moves. We can see the lines no matter how many times we cross over it with that directional shading. So at the circular shading, we are not getting that stroke, at least if we are doing it correctly. Now, what I want to caution you on is making your loops too large. If you go too large with the circular motion, then it has difficulty overlapping. It's hard to get those little spaces being left behind to fill in. You also want to be careful, even if you work small, about not overlapping enough. So if you work still with a smaller circular motion like I first demonstrated, but if you don't overlap enough, you could still see the pencil strokes there. And I know this doesn't focus too well when we're up close like that. Let me try backing out a little bit more. And hopefully you can see what I'm talking about, where I can see a loop here, I can see a loop here, I can see a loop here. And that's because, again, I'm not overlapping enough. So for this technique to work, we need to overlap as we move with that circular shading. We need to overlap quite often. Now that doesn't mean in the course of making those value scales that if this was my little rectangle on my paper we created, if I'm way over here, I'm not backtracking all the way over here. But I do back into the older pencil that I've laid down a little bit and then come out a little bit. So it is a constant back and forth motion while your pencil moves in this direction. So what you're going to see is I'm going to work through the HB value scale using this technique. Again, I am working with my light values first. When I work with my lighter values, if you try the technique I described to you as helping me get light values, where I hold my pencil I hold my pencil with my fingers far away from the point so I don't have much pressure here. Whereas in directional shading, my wrist was doing the most of the motion. In this one, my wrist is not going to move. I'm going to move more of my arm so that I can get a light pressure on my pencil and have a little bit more control, because if I don't move my wrist, then that pencil doesn't want to wiggle around a lot, and I can then work with inside my borders of my value scale box, which is one of the things we want to learn circular shading for, is to help create clean edges and solid gray values without a lot of texture left from our pencil strokes. So I'll let you get to that part of the video. Again, I apologize for the sound issues. So hopefully this describes to you what it is that did not record in the audio of those videos.